Hey, good morning, everyone. How are you today? It's Tuesday. I was just looking up some news because I've got a whole list of things to cover with you. I'm Kate Lincoln-Goldfinch, immigration lawyer, here with you every Tuesday in English, Thursday in Spanish, to talk through the immigration news of the week, update you about what's going on, talk to you, get your live comments and questions, and give you an action tip for how you can get involved and stay informed about immigration things. So welcome to the Tuesday show. Let's go ahead and jump right into our news of the week. The number one news, or it's not number one, it is the first on my list, is about Boston officials warning of economic fallout or consequences if TPS for Haitians is allowed to end. So as a reminder, TPS stands for Temporary Protected Status, and it is a program by which people from certain countries who face infrastructure collapses get legal permission to stay in this country. Haitians are one of the countries, peoples who have received TPS status. That was after the earthquake, the big earthquake that they had there in 2010. They haven't been able to really rebuild. And so there are many Haitians in this country who were here when the earthquake happened. They got TPS status. They've had work permits. They've built a life here. They've been contributing to our economy. And generally what happens is the president will review and generally renew TPS programs year after year, and they will cancel them when it can be determined that the country is stable again, that the people who are in this country can be expected to go back to their home country, that the economy and the stability of that country has come back. And it takes a while for these things to occur, and presidents historically are really thoughtful about canceling or revoking TPS. And certainly when TPS revocation is considered, it does not come with this added layer of like mass detentions and deportations. It would be done gently. People would be given time to have a long ramp before their status expires, and they can look into whether they might qualify for something else or whether they themselves are ready to go home, etc. Well, it is a surprise to no one that the Trump administration takes a slash and burn method to TPS, and every TPS program for every country that has come before the Trump administration has been revoked. But not only just revoked, but revoked very quickly, accompanied with often derogatory or racist comments about the people of those nations, and also accompanied with threats of detention and deportation. So that's the difference in the way that the Trump administration has approached TPS cancellation, including TPS cancellation for Haitians. So that's the backdrop. Trump revoked and threatened all of the Haitians with TPS cancellation. Then there was a federal lawsuit. The courts have temporarily blocked the cancellation, and the litigation is pending. Well, the city of Boston officials or city counselors have come out with a statement where they say that Boston is home to 3,700 TPS protected Haitians who are a major part of that city's workforce, and that the city would be harmed economically and socially if the status were to end. So I just really appreciate when we see cities coming out like this, city councils coming out with statements like this. Now, what the city of Boston city councilors say isn't going to have all that much impact maybe on the litigation. But at the end of the day, what's important is that we see cities like Boston, like Chicago, like Minneapolis, like Los Angeles, where the city leadership is being brave enough to come out and make statements like these. And I know that in Austin, where I live, there has been frustration amongst the people with city leadership not being brave enough to come out with bold statements like these. And the city leadership will say, well, it's because the legislature and has passed SB4, and the governor and the Texas legislature will come down on us and we'll lose our positions or face fines and penalties, and so we can't do it. And I understand all of that. And it is a bit of a balm, for those of us who want to see cities stand up to actions like this from the Trump administration when we see city leadership doing stuff like this. Now, obviously, like the city councilors in Boston aren't going to face backlash from the state of Massachusetts in the same way that city councilors in Austin would face backlash from the state of Texas. So we do have to take those things into consideration and be thoughtful about our leadership and what they're doing. But anyway, go Boston City Councilors. Happy to hear this statement. Second item is about Mahmoud Khalil. You'll remember him as the leader of the pro-Palestinian protests at Columbia University. He is a permanent resident, was a permanent resident, and was a leader of these protests. And the Trump administration went after him hard, detained him because of the use of his speech. While his wife was pregnant, she gave birth, I believe, while he was in detention. He was finally released. There was a ton of news and headlines about Mahmoud Khalil last year, early about this time last year, I think it was. Well, he was placed in deportation proceedings and he's a green card holder. And the argument was that he had committed fraud on his green card application because he had not fully disclosed his membership in pro-Palestinian organizations in, I think, Lebanon. I think he's from Lebanon. And so the immigration judge ordered him deported, found that fraud had been committed and ordered him deported, which I think was a pretty shocking decision. There are waivers for fraud. And to me, as an immigration practitioner, on these applications, when you apply for a green card or citizenship and you're asked to reveal your membership in certain organizations. Is this my cat under the table? What is going on under here? I've got like phantom noises under my seat. And I'm like, is my seat about to break on live camera? Or is my cat playing? I don't know. We'll see. We'll be on the edge of our seats waiting to find out. Okay, Mahmoud Khalil. So when somebody is asked, just think for yourself. When somebody's asked to list every organization they've ever belonged to, imagine what an exhaustive list that could be. And obviously people leave things off or get the timing wrong. But this was the thing that they went after Mahmoud Khalil about. The judge went with it. I don't know anything about the judge. I don't know any, but wouldn't surprise me whatsoever if the judge were pretty anti-immigrant, because immigration judges are part of the Department of Justice. The Executive Office for Immigration Review is the immigration court system. It's actually an administrative court body, meaning it is part of the executive branch of the government. It's not an Article 3 judicial branch. We have the 3 branches. We expect our courts to be in the 3rd branch to have the separation of powers. But in the immigration court system, the whole court system, including the appellate body, is actually part of the executive branch, is part of the Department of Justice. It was the cat. There she is. So what that means is that all the immigration judges and all the prosecutors who are part of the Department of Homeland Security, prosecutors are part of DHS, judges are part of the DOJ. Both of those are executive agencies that report up to the Attorney General, who reports up to the president. So you could say the president and the AG are the boss of all of the immigration court system. So it is routine, it is common to witness injustices in the immigration court system. And that's, for example, why so many people are taking their cases to get out of detention over to federal court. Those are those habeas cases, because we're not finding justice in the immigration court system with Trump at the helm of the immigration court system. So you have to exempt yourself and get over to federal court where you can. But there's a lot of restrictions about what cases can be taken over to federal court. Only a limited number of cases can be litigated in federal court. But when they are, this is what we're seeing over and over and over and over again in the Trump administration, is that federal judges, even Republican appointed federal judges, even Trump appointed federal judges, are siding with the people, because the stuff that they're doing in the Trump administration is just so blatantly violating people's constitutional rights. So back to the case of Mahmoud Khalil. So he's in immigration court, right, which is all ruled by the president, where they find that he committed fraud on his application because he didn't list his organizations. I would not be able to list all my organizations, for what it's worth. And anyway, he appealed to the Board of Immigration Appeals, which is over the Executive Office for Immigration Review, which is part of the Department of Justice, which reports to the president. And they also created a new set of rules and regulations this year that shortened the appeal window from 30 days, which was already ridiculously short, to 10 days. And then they gave the appellate body, the same thing that the Supreme Court has, which is basically discretion to decide what cases they will hear. And that's not generally the way it works in appeals. In criminal cases and most civil cases, if you don't like the first decision you get, you can appeal up to the appellate court. That's the way the judicial system works, that you get a second chance, you can appeal. And this appellate courts have to generally hear all the cases that come before them because that's justice, right? They're not able to pick and choose. The only court that is able to pick and choose in this land, I don't know if that's actually true, but as far as I know, the only court that is able to pick and choose is the Supreme Court. And that's because the Supreme Court is only one court with only 9 justices meant to, determine what the law is over all these other courts that aren't necessarily agreeing. And so often the Supreme Court will grant cert, it's called, when there's like a circuit split, where the 11th Circuit and the 5th Circuit and the 3rd Circuit have all decided differently on similar situations. So in Texas and Louisiana, it's one thing. In California and Oregon, it's another thing. In the Northeast, it's another thing. That's when the Supreme Court will grant cert on an appeal to even out the law of the land in the United States. But all of the other appellate court systems are supposed to just hear all of the appeals that come before them. It's another bite at the apple. Well, in the Board of Immigration Appeals over the immigration court system, the Trump administration said, you know what? We want the BIA to be like the Supreme Court, where they only have to hear the cases that they want to hear. Another major, major blow to the idea of justice in the immigration court system. Well, Mahmoud Khalil appealed his case, revoking his green card for fraud, to the BIA. And wouldn't you know, the BIA sided with the immigration judge. And so he has lost his appeal. I can tell you, I haven't read all the briefings. I haven't talked to the man. I haven't talked to his lawyers. My instinct, reading the news and knowing what I know about the system, is that this man has faced an incredible injustice because of his exercise of his right to free speech. That's my read on the situation without being up close to it. Another thing on TPS, Ethiopians in the United States have had their status revoked by the Trump administration, but a federal judge, U.S. District Judge Brian Murphy in Massachusetts, postponed the termination of TPS for Ethiopians, finding that the Trump administration unlawfully attempted to end it. This is what happens. They just revoke it, no notice, don't publish, they don't follow the regulatory procedure. It's just also swooped in fast. And that's what the courts are finding, there's a process to this stuff that you have to demonstrate that you've carefully considered this and you've notified people and you've given them time, and they don't do that, of course. So this, we'll see. So that what that means is that TPS for Ethiopians is not currently revoked. If you are Ethiopian, somebody who is under TPS status, please consult now with an immigration lawyer about your status, because ultimately TPS is not obviously permanent status, and it looks like it is on the chopping block, of course, so you need to explore what else you can do. Next one. This one makes my blood boil. This is the headline. Federal judge orders Trump administration to stop coercing immigrant children to self-deport. These people are monsters. Can you imagine being before a child, a literal child, and threatening them and coercing them to sign a deportation order that they may not even be able to understand or even read? This is happening right now as I'm talking to you on camera. Some person is sitting before an immigration officer who is lying to them and threatening them and telling them that if they don't sign this paper right now, they're going to be in jail for 5. I have a new client. Brian is a U.S. citizen. Brian Morales, his case has come out publicly. U.S. citizen, literally born in a hospital in Colorado. in a hospital in Colorado, U.S. citizen, was driving in a work truck as a passenger. The driver got pulled over. This was the Gillespie County Sheriff in Colorado. They start questioning Brian, a U.S. citizen born at a hospital in Colorado, about his immigration status. And he says, I'm a citizen. And they're like, shut up. We're turning you over to immigration. So they turn him over to immigration. And he tells the CBP officers, I'm a U.S. citizen. And they said, shut up. And essentially, I'm paraphrasing. And then he says, but I'm a U.S. citizen. And the third time he said it, they told him, if you say that again, you are going to jail for 5 years for fraud. And this is a young man who believes them, and he doesn't know his rights. And so he proceeds to cooperate and sign their stupid papers. Big surprise. It's a big surprise that people sign the papers when they have some official before them saying, if you don't freaking sign this, you're going to be deported for 5 years. This is an adult U.S. citizen born in a hospital in Colorado who signed the paper because they were telling him he was going to go to jail for 5 years for committing fraud for saying he was a U.S. citizen. They do that shit with kids, little kids, teenage kids. They tell them, if you don't sign it, you're going to be in jail. Can you imagine? They tell them you're going to be in jail. And it's true. They actually do this. I've actually talked to people, I don't know, hundreds, if not thousands of people who have literally had these threats placed upon them if they don't sign paperwork. So note, don't sign the papers. This is like Know Your Rights 101. Don't sign the papers unless you've reviewed them with a lawyer. Period. But also, the federal courts have to update. You know what this means? This means that somebody brought a lawsuit, probably the ACLU, I don't know. Somebody brought a lawsuit, which means they had plaintiffs, which means they had reports of enough children to become plaintiffs in a lawsuit with evidence where they say these children were threatened and coerced into signing deportation agreements, unaccompanied migrant children. Well, what do you know? The judge overseeing that case, I'm trying to see if Michael Fitzgerald, thank you, Judge Fitzgerald, ordered the Department of Homeland Security to stop using coercive and threatening language to convince unaccompanied immigrant children to agree to deportation. This is like, welcome to the land of things that should be very obvious, but the federal courts are stating the obvious repeatedly. They must be very tired of this. Last news item, and then I'll start getting to your questions. Feel free to start putting them in. Another big surprise. Data finds that only 2% of February immigrant court filings were based on alleged criminal activity. 2%. That means in February of this year, 2026, 741 cases were filed in immigration court that alleged criminal activity, and that accounted for 2% of the cases that were initiated. Now, what if, y'all, just what if the only cases that were filed alleged criminal activity? What if we could slash the number of cases in the immigration court system that is massively backlogged with 3 million cases and not enough immigration judges, and most people in agreement that actual dangerous, violent criminals should not be in this country? The actual dangerous, violent, of which there are very, very few, by the way, I will just note. What if we used our, I don't know, common sense and only focused on those? And then the 98% of people who don't have criminal history are not put in the immigration court system, are not pulled off the streets, are not taken from their children, are not traumatized, but rather put through an administrative process that reviews their status and sees if they're eligible for something, gives them notice that they need to leave, etc., if they don't have legal status and can't get legal status. There's a very humane administrative process that we could follow. And what if we only use the immigration court system and the detention system for people who have actual, literal, dangerous, violent crimes? In a heartbeat, in a second, it would solve the problems. And it would also solve the problems, supposed concerns of conservative people, of the Trump administration, who are out there yammering all day long about dangerous, violent, criminal immigrants. Well, I don't know. How about we focus on those people then? Not hard stuff, really. But anyway, what was that headline? Oh, 2%. 2%. Okay, let's go to your questions. We'll start with Blanca. Buen récord. Si se va, I'm going to read it in Spanish. I'll redo it in English. Buen récord. Si se va a última corte, cancelación, deportación con visa VAWA y visa T en proceso, te pueden deportar. No deben deportar a una persona que tiene las dos pendientes, una VAWA y una visa. A veces los jueces dicen que tienes que pedir una defensa en frente del juez, que el juez puede decidir. Y VAWA, hay una tipo de VAWA que puede solicitar en frente de la corte. Entonces, no debe ser deportado con esta historia, pero debemos consultar. The question is, if I go to court, immigration court, and I have both a VAWA case for victims of violence and a T visa case for victims of abuse in the workplace, can they deport me? And the answer is probably not. Sometimes if you have, so a VAWA and a T visa are cases that go to U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Service. They're not cases that the immigration court can decide, but there is a type of VAWA that the judge can decide. So sometimes if you have an impatient judge, then they'll say, you're going to have to seek a defense that I have jurisdiction to decide. And so sometimes, even though you've got a family-based case pending or a T visa pending, you end up having to also apply for asylum or cancellation or something like that. So sometimes you'll have to do that. Most of the time, though, you can actually ask DHS to expedite the case that's pending with USCIS. And you can say, like, you need to decide my VAWA case more quickly. That's usually how that's handled. I am a J1 visa student. This is the second time I have overstayed, and I have been using a Social Security number to pay taxes for 5 years. I would like to know what my options are. Okay, well, the first thing is that many of the J1s have the 2-year foreign residency requirement. So the J1 visa it's an international exchange visa. People who are on Fulbright scholarships will come on a J1 visa. Oftentimes people who are nannies on like a nanny program, exchange program, will come on a J1 visa. And often the idea of the J1 program is a program between the two countries in which the sending country, let's say Brazil, is expecting to benefit from that exchange. So we're going to send one of our scholars from Brazil to the University of Texas on a J1 visa to work and study and learn. But then that scholar needs to come back to Brazil for 2 years to share what they've learned. Their knowledge needs to come back to the country. Also, maybe like Brazil paid for it, etc. That's called the foreign residency requirement. So the first thing to watch out for when you have a J1 visa is whether you have that 2-year foreign residency requirement. The cat's going. I might see it again. But at least now I know it's a cat and my furniture isn't about to fall apart. So you can check on your paperwork whether the 2-year foreign residency requirement applies. You can also check on the sticker on your visa in your passport, and it will say it applies or it doesn't apply. So if you have that 2-year requirement, you need to just expect to go back for 2 years unless you have a waiver. So there are some waivers available if you can get sending country, Brazil in this example, to waive the requirement that you go back, then you don't have the requirement. Sometimes you can do exceptional like hardship, etc. There are waivers available, so you can look into that. Then the second thing that you want to know is how would I stay legally in this country? So I'm on a J1 visa. Let's assume you don't have the foreign residency requirement. You've overstayed your visa. What does that mean? That means you entered legally and you are now undocumented. You are now a visa overstay, and you could get picked up and you could get deported, or you could apply for legal status. And whenever we have someone who's a undocumented person who comes in for a consultation, what we're looking for is, do you have ways to get legal status, maybe through employment, although it's pretty rare with undocumented time in the US? Do you have relatives who could petition for you, a spouse, a parent, a child, maybe a sibling, although the wait time is really long? So we'll explore your family relationships. Then we're going to move into your humanitarian options. Have you ever been the victim of a crime? Have you ever suffered workplace abuse? I've seen a lot of J1s who are actually eligible for a T visa. Have you been the victim of domestic violence, etc.? So that's when we get into your history, your immigration history, your family history, your work history, your life history. It really is like the story of your life so far is what helps us explore whether you might qualify for legal status. And that's why I say that every individual needs an immigration consultation, because every individual has a different life story. Like, even if you are a twin, and you grew up with this person, you go on to live your own lives, to have your own relationships, to have different work history, to have different school history. And you deserve the opportunity to go into an immigration law firm, to talk to a lawyer about your specific case and explore whether you can get legal status. You deserve that. So this is an important and weighty question for a person, and it's not something that should be solved through a simple internet search or talking to your friends or talking to your neighbors or talking to, please, like a notario. I talked to a woman 2 days ago. She is a permanent resident, green card holder. Her husband is undocumented. They have a US citizen daughter. Her husband got pulled over driving to work and taken. And they've been together for a long time in the US. And I asked her, have you ever petitioned for your husband? And she said, well, we hired a notario, paid her some money, and she never filed anything. And that is a refrain that I hear like a drumbeat. And this is why I'm always like up here talking to you guys about, do not go to a notario. It's because I've seen the ways that people's lives are changed, and not in a good way, because they have placed their future in the hands of a person who either doesn't know, giving them the benefit of the doubt, or they don't care, which is some of them. And let me just tell you, not only do I see this in my practice as an immigration lawyer talking to people who are impacted, I also serve on the state bar's unlawful practice of law committee. I'm a volunteer investigator of these notarios. So not only do I see my own cases, but on my work as an investigator, I have reports filed that I have to look into. And these people are bold. They have websites. They have social media profiles. They are out there doing videos like I'm doing right now, acting like they know what they're talking about, or they're authorized to do that. And they charge less, obviously, than a lawyer. They don't have to go to law school. They don't have to maintain a law license. They don't have ethical duties. They don't have the duty of confidentiality. They don't have to maintain malpractice insurance, right? None of the stuff that to protect our clients is required by a notario. Like, for example, if I make a mistake on one of my clients' cases, they can go to another lawyer and they can file, it's called a Lozada motion. They can file a motion that says, I hired a lawyer and my lawyer messed up, and therefore I deserve a second chance at this. And they'll get it. You don't get it if you've gone to a notario, because what they'll say is, well, you shouldn't have done that. That's your fault. You filed this application, you missed your deadline, you got it wrong. Too bad, so sad. So there's a reason. It's not just because I'm a lawyer and I want people to go to lawyers. I understand how it looks. It looks self-serving. But hopefully by now, if you watch my show, you know me well enough to know that I'm not in this to just like make money. I am in this because I believe in immigrant families being able to stay together in this country. and work and prosper and have love for each other and safety and security, just like anybody else deserves. That's why I do this work. And that's why I don't want people to go to notarios with their lives, because they are not equipped. They're not equipped. And oftentimes they have bad intentions, actually, to just take people's money, and they don't care that they make mistakes on cases. And what happens is they start to get caught and they just shut their doors. There's no recourse. There's nothing you can do. They're just gone, right? It's not like a lawyer where you can go to the bar if they do something to you. Okay, done with that. Thank you for listening. This is going to be, I think, is this my last question? Yeah. Okay. This is in Spanish. I'll repeat it in English. Hice mi ajuste de estatus por matrimonio hace 9 meses y no recibí ninguna actualización. ¿Es normal? No, no es normal. Debes tener el recibo entre por lo más 6 meses. So, si ha sido más de o casi 9 meses sin un recibo, debe averiguar que el paquete fue recibido. Puedes chequear tu tarjeta de crédito o tu cuenta de banco, y espero que mandaron el paquete con el talón de la caja de correo como tracking, package tracking, porque hay que averiguar que inmigración recibió el paquete. If you ever need someone to write psychological evaluations, please let me know. That's my specialty. Amazing. We do those day in and day out. Could I ask you a favor to send me a DM and I'll connect you to my legal department, because we have a list of people that we use. We use psychological evaluations on maybe the majority of our cases, our waiver cases, our VAWA cases, our U visa cases, our T visa cases, and waivers are many different kinds of cases. Anytime you have to prove hardship, a psych eval is a very useful way to do that. So if you'd like to be on our referral list, please send me a DM and we'll get that process started. Thank you for watching. All right, team, I'm going to wrap up for today. I appreciate you being here with me. Before you go, let me give you your action tip. Don't go yet, because we're doing little things each week to stay involved and engaged. I'm going to give you a couple of accounts that I want you to follow, people who are awesome in their own right and are now getting into the immigration space, and they're doing good things. The first one is Miss Rachel. You know Miss Rachel, who does the little videos for kids, and she started with the war in Gaza, speaking out about the war in Gaza. Now she's doing a lot of advocacy for the detained children at Dilley, and her Instagram account is Miss Rachel. It's MS Rachel 4 Littles. And then the next one is Michael from Reading Rainbow. He also is getting involved in helping get detained kids out of detention. And his name, Michael, is MYCHAL, the number 3 TS from Reading Rainbow. You can also just find him if you go to Reading Rainbow. So follow Miss Rachel and follow Michael from Reading Rainbow, specifically because they are doing important work for immigrant children and getting them released. All right, team. Love you guys. Thanks for being here with me. I will see you on Thursday en español. Adiós.